Well, good evening. Thank you for joining us on TRP Live, a show created by the folks who believe in no soul left behind, the Reclamation Project. It's not about having candid discussions on real issues that impact people. It's about highlighting stories that exemplify the wonder working power of God. And tonight is one of those nights. I'm your guest host, Lorna Bryant. Tonight, death that did not come. With the floor caving in under their feet and the roof crashing down on top of their heads, it was the perfect recipe for sure death. Yet they walked away without physical injury. Despite the devastation to their apartment complex during the 1994 Northridge Earthquake and their 18-hour adventure that would follow, they survived it. Wow, what a story. Here to tell us about that are the survivors themselves. Kimberly Evans Dixon is an attorney and partner of a national law firm. Born in Inglewood and raised in Bakersfield, California, she now resides in the Bay Area with her husband and 7-year-old daughter. Stanley Mackey, conversely, was born in Bakersfield and raised in Los Angeles, California. He's been an IT consultant for more than 20 years and is the founder of the Reclamation Project. He now lives in the Silicon Valley with his wife and 4 kids. Welcome to you both.
Hi,
Thank
good
you.
evening.
Thank you, Lorna. Good evening. Hey,
So,
Kim.
Hey, Stanley.
now,
Yes.
now let's get things started. I'll start with you, Kim. Tell me, how are you connected to Stan and the story?
Well, I was trying to remember if we met before junior high, but my first memory of Stanley is junior high. He was in 8th grade. I was in 7th grade at Emerson. And that's my first memory of him. And then I would just see him at different events. I know our parents were friends. I know his father ran track with my uncle. And I know my dad and his dad were friends. Um, and then we would just see each other over the course of years. And he's also relatives with some of my good friends. And I don't know how much you want me to tell about Stanley, but he was after me in
He was chasing you, huh?
in junior
Here
high.
we go.
And
Here
so
we-
finally gave in. He broke me down in high school.
Oh, okay.
So we started dating. I think 10th grade. I think I was in 10th grade and he was in 11th grade.
Okay. So, Stan, I'm going to ask you to give your version of the same story then.
Yeah, the first part was right, so we don't have to go through that.
Okay.
I heard the story that we crossed paths when we were much younger, but of course we were too. That was too far back to remember. But it definitely was 8th grade where we became friends. Her mom was actually my teacher
Ah,
in the 8th grade. And so we met there at Emerson, definitely became friends there. And then we got together. I forget your year behind me. So yeah, you're right. It was her sophomore, my junior year in
okay.
high
Now,
school.
when you say Emerson, I'm assuming Emerson Junior High in Los Angeles or in
In
Baker?
Bakersfield.
Bakersfield.
Ah, there's an
Mm.
Emerson in the Westchester area, so I wasn't sure if that's
Oh,
where you're
okay.
In
talking.
LA. Come
Okay.
on, come on.
Okay, so what high school did you both attend?
So we went to different high schools. So
Ah,
I went to Bakersfield High.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went to West High School, and for me, that made things drama free. If there's one thing that I was trying to avoid was drama by having relationships at the same school, so it
Ah,
worked out for
okay.
me.
And unless Kim had girlfriends at West High School who had eyes and ears on her. We no need to disclose that 30 plus
Right,
years later, right?
Right, right.
right.
So tell me about you all dating through high school. What was that like, Kim?
I mean, like Stanley said, it was drama free. I mean, part of you, you kind of do want that boyfriend at the same school. But we saw each other a lot. We were able to see each other a lot, and the schools through dances and all that kind of stuff. So we had lots of opportunities to hang out. We would go to the movies and all of that. So it really wasn't a big deal that we weren't at the same school. But I enjoyed it. I mean, I think we had a good friendship and boyfriend girlfriend relationship in high school.
Okay. And Stan, did you all live in close proximity to each other so it wasn't a struggle? I don't know if you had a car, and I don't know how the bus system runs in Bakersfield, but was there a problem seeing each other?
The bus system in Bakersfield was not 24/7 like LA.
Okay.
And neither did it go everywhere. So no, you had to have a car or a bike. And in Bakersfield, you don't do no bikes during the day and during the summer. So no. I
had access. Yeah,
I had access. My Uncle Glenn was my go-to. I'd go to my Uncle Glenn. Can I use the car? So yeah, that's how we connected.
Okay, yeah. So Kim, you weren't sitting on the handlebars of a bicycle going on dates.
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
She was too high sedity for that. She wasn't gonna get on
my God, here we
go.
Okay.
I'll just play it.
Shall we use the word bougie? I embrace it myself.
Who don't know that term. Yeah, yeah.
I'm not mad at it. Of a bike.
Okay. Hey, it's not my thing, so I'm bougie leaning, so I get it.
Yeah, that's a good term.
So did you both date beyond high school?
Yes, we continued. We dated all through college.
And you attended the same university together?
So not initially. I actually, like I said, Stanley was a year older than ahead of me, so he was at Cal State Northridge, and my first year I actually went to Chico State for a year. And then I decided to transfer to Northridge for a lot of reasons. I mean, a lot of it was because I wanted to be closer to Stanley, but also home. I didn't have a car, and it was Chico's way out there. It's kind of hard. And I already knew a lot of people that went to Northridge. So I just wanted to kind of get closer to home. So I transferred my sophomore year, and I graduated from there.
Okay.
It's all right. It's all right to say that you really wanted to come to see son because I was there. So no, but I'll take credit for campaigning. I did campaign hard for that one right there.
It was a major reason.
I campaigned for that one.
Look, as someone who went to and graduated from a far-reaching Cal State, Humboldt State, I know what it feels like to be one of the few in a rural community, and I'm sure that helped shape your decision, in addition to wanting to be closer to home and wanting to be closer to Stanley, as you call him.
Right. Well, it was a good experience. I mean, it was few Black people, but it made us more close-knit. So I did actually really enjoy Chico. Probably, but for that relationship, I probably would have stayed there.
Yeah, understood. So what year was it when you transferred to Northridge?
1991.
Okay. So dating, tell me what the relationship was like, Stan, dating someone now on the same campus. And I know CSUN is a very, very large campus, so it's like a community within itself. Yeah,
it was the commuter school, as they used to call it back then. They called it a party school as well, although Chico will probably argue that they were the party school. But it was definitely a commuter school. A lot of people there, lots of traffic, large campus, definitely much larger now than it was when we were attending. But that was the way to go. That's kind of how I was. I was very comfortable being settled in a relationship and doing my thing. I worked. I had music as well. Some of you may have caught the broadcast a week ago with my group. So I was between being busy with working on my degree in engineering. I worked for an engineering firm while I was in school. My relationship with Kim existed. A strong relationship with her existed. And I had the group. So I remained busy, and I did my best to balance all of those things, but it was definitely ideal for her to be close. If she had remained in Chico, that would have been just a wee bit too difficult, I think, for me.
I'm guessing the relationship blossomed from high school puppy love to now you're adults and now adults in the same proximity, and now you're dating as adults. Were there significant changes there, Kim?
Um, I'm not sure about significant changes. I mean, we definitely grew together. I mean, and matured together. Um, but I'm trying to think. It's been so long, so long. I'm trying to think of like
Mm-hmm.
really what the changes were, but it kind of just flowed. I mean, we just grew together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And Stan, what about you?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that I think that we were both very mature. I think that we were quite mature for our age, and so we were able to manage a serious relationship, boyfriend girlfriend relationship that was, for all intents and purposes, was drama free. And I think that we gave off a good front to be as young as we were. People would look at us and say, they're quite a mature couple. I believe that that would be the impression that most people would have. So I think that we balanced it well.
So I envision in my head Omar Epps and who was it? Neil Long. What was it? Higher Learning. That was the epitome of my view of Southern California college life during the 90s. So would
Hmm.
that kind of paint the picture?
I'm trying to remember the movie. I think I
Yeah,
only
yeah.
seen the movie one
I
time.
know.
So
I know,
Okay,
girl.
I'll say School Days. How about that?
yeah.
That's
Well,
going back even further.
right.
Yeah,
You
I
that's
know
remember
what?
true.
that more. I
You
don't know
know,
if we were that, but
I will say this. I'll say this to kind of paint a picture that life was good in the early 90s, just in general. I mean, you had things on the scene. You had the Rodney King incident there, so we were still dealing with some craziness like we're dealing with right now. And
Absolutely.
I'm thankful for today because it just gives me a break. I've been consuming a whole lot of this for the past week, and I do just need a little bit of to breathe and digest something else. But even back then, we had social justice issues to deal with. But outside of those, or simultaneous, while at the same time, life was still good. It was a lot of fun. You could go places. You had lots of freedom, and that we did. Kim traveled. We traveled a lot together, even with each other's families.
Okay.
So even when I was doing things like youth related with my youth ministry, taking kids to Yosemite for teen retreats and stuff, Kim was there. Kim's family went camping. I remember one week, I'll never forget it. I loved it. It was absolutely one of the most memorable events in my life, was spending a week with her family in Yosemite Valley one summer. But we were always together and always doing things with the others' families, and just life in general, I believe, was good. Beach. She and I both like to dance. Even though we went to clubs back in the day. And I'll just speak for myself right now, and this is not putting her on blast, but I love to dance, and so I was trying to get to anywhere where I can clear the floor. And I mean clear the floor because I wanted everybody spread out so I
I
could
had
do
I
my
had to
thing.
watch I had to watch my knees. But go ahead.
Oh,
Come on,
hey,
don't tell everybody.
these are things that is overrated in this present time.
Right.
Oh, I thought she was about to talk about an incident that happened where I accidentally kicked her or something. Did I kick you one time? I slept out on the
Yes, that's
dance
what I'm
floor.
saying. I had to watch my knees.
Oh
I
my.
Oh
learned. I
goodness.
learned.
Yeah. But life was good because we danced, we played together, went to the beach. We did all sorts of fun things together. And she supported me a lot with my group. She supported my group, so when my group went places to sing, she was there. So being together and growing up, maturing in the '90s and the early '90s was just it was a good time.
And let me just add to when you asked, how things change with the relationship. So I mean, this was not like some willy nilly, relationship. I mean, in fact, the part about us growing together, I mean, we had plans. Like the plan was to eventually get married. I mean, that was our plan. So we weren't just dating to be dating. I mean, we thought we were gonna end up together. I mean, that was,
Right.
our mindset back then.
So this was a serious relationship
Right.
now.
Hmm.
And Stan, I will have to concur. Now in the early 90s, I was already a young divorced mother at that
Hmm.
time. But I remember, I will say the 90s in Southern California, specifically amongst the Black community, was a glorious time. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot going on. It was vibrant. I lived close to Leimert Park.
Oh yeah,
So, I mean,
the
and
center.
I got my club on too. And we might have crossed paths during that time.
It probably did.
I do recall that time. So,
Mm.
Kim, you said that, you were looking to the future, and this was a serious, committed relationship at this time.
Right.
So, how did you live close to each other during that time, or paint that?
So early on, yeah. I mean, when I first moved to Northridge, I stayed in the dorms, and I think Stanley had just moved out of the dorms, and he had gotten a roommate, and so he didn't live far. I mean, it was walking distance. I could definitely walk there,
Mhm.
maybe a couple blocks away. And then the next year, I think he did move to Altadena to his uncle, so that was a little bit farther. But I think by that time, I might have had a car or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the first year we did live close to each other.
The
Oh,
tempo, the white tempo.
Right. Yep, my first
oh,
car.
oh man, those don't even exist anymore.
Come on, I hope not.
with the
Yeah.
with the rims.
Oh, it's a Focus now. That is
Oh,
what
okay.
You're
replaced.
right. It converted.
Yeah. So, would you agree that you were serious, Stan, and you were looking to your marriage? You're in a fully committed, just strong relationship, looking towards the future.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. At no point was have I ever been an angel, but in my mind, I was convinced, that Kim was the one. And if I might fast forward, just a tad bit, I'll say that, we're both perfectly fine and happy, of course, where we are now. But there was nothing that really got in the way of our relationship. There was no singular event or anything like that I would say got in the way. But what I will say is that not being able to communicate as effectively, and I'll say it that way, as effectively as I can now, I believe contributed to the demise of our relationship. And I'll only speak for myself. My inability to communicate, as couples must learn to do in order to maintain a successful relationship, I was unable to do then. I thought I was communicating, well, but in hindsight, I recognized that could have been better, and so that contributed. But most definitely, Kim was the one. I treated her like royalty. I treated her. I believe I did. She might argue now.
No,
That'd be
I won't
funny.
argue. I won't argue.
Now, let's transition a little bit. And I'll let you both take the lead on this. Let's talk about the days and months leading up to January 17th, 1994. So I'll start with you, Kim. What was going on in your mind in those days leading up to that moment?
Well, I'm not really sure what was going on there. Well, actually, I do. I had recently gotten a new job,
Mhm.
and I was going to be starting the job. Actually, the day of the earthquake was going to be my first day. And
On Martin
so
Luther King Day?
yes,
Oh
and so
my.
it was a answering service. And although we weren't going to be seen to the public, the view is, well, you're going to be talking on the phone to all these people. You speak better if you're dressed business-like. So I had to get all these business clothes. And I remember my mom taking me shopping. I got all these clothes. I got my closet just exactly how I wanted. I had all the great accessories. I had organized it and everything. And then that weekend, I think we were going to Bakersfield a lot. And I don't know why we went to Bakersfield that weekend. I don't know if it was because my choice had a singing engagement or we just were going. But because it was so close, we would go to Bakersfield pretty much every weekend, at least twice a month. And I remember going home and and I thought about this today, we probably would have stayed in Bakersfield because it was a long weekend. And
Mm-hmm.
probably the only reason we came back is because I had to go to work, start my new job that Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I remember about that time. I was in about to start my last semester of college. We were still on Christmas break, and I think we had one more week left, or maybe 2 weeks or something. So I was pretty much chilling, excited about starting my last semester of college and starting a new job.
Okay. And Stan, what do you recollect about the days prior?
Well, the days prior, I'm glad you brought it closer to home because reaching back too far, it's
Right.
been 26 years now. It's fading, but definitely leading up to it. And this kind of hints to the point of, or hints to the thrust of I know the show, and that is, I just felt like, I probably was the word that I use as an adult now. The word would be emphatically that I needed to make some changes in my life, and so I remember rededicating my life at church this weekend prior to going back to Northridge with Kim. And so I absolutely honestly can't remember everything that led to that, but I did feel like I just wasn't doing all of the right things in my life with regard to God. And so that weekend, I rededicated my life. And then a day and a half later, earthquake hit.
Now, Kim, if I understand the story now, the story has impacted my life. I don't remember
Wow.
if Stan told me this story one-on-one or if it was a testimony, but it was a life-changing story in different ways for me. So the part of the story that I remember is the following day, you had a similar come to Jesus moment of your own in church. Am I right?
So it was actually the week after the earthquake for me is when I went and rededicated myself at church.
Mhm.
But I don't know what you're hinting at, but um, the issues that we were dealing with as far as not doing everything, as a serious couple, we engaged in premarital sex,
Mhm.
and we both grew up in the church, and we knew that's not how we were brought up.
Mhm.
And so it was always, for me, an issue that I struggled with.
Mhm.
And we did have a discussion on the way home from Bakersfield the night before the earthquake about that.
Mhm.
Now, that's not the first time we had talked about it. We had talked about it several times before it had been brought up. And it was just kind of a discussion. We would just talk about it. But that night, and I don't remember everything, but I just remember that night we talked about it and said that we were going to make an effort, or we weren't going to anymore.
I think the
That,
word is abstain.
yeah, abstain.
Okay.
And I don't remember
Mm-hmm.
everything about that night, but I do remember going up the Grapevine. We had this discussion, and that's the resolution we came to.
So you're talking an hour and a half long drive, if I remember correctly. So it's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty lengthy discussion that you had.
Well, the
Sufficient
discussion really
time.
wasn't. Yeah, I mean, I think it was early on in the drive, and I don't know what we talked about after that, but I don't. It wasn't anything that we needed to talk each other into or anything. It was just kind of, we just came to that resolution.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
so would you like to add anything, Stan?
No. I was gonna say, we both agreed. Again, an hour, 90 minutes is sufficient time to go through, go through the points of the situation. Again, I had forgotten that we had talked about it before that, so it wasn't the first time. But 90 minutes was sufficient time, and that ride, it's dark and it's mountainous, and stars are out. So I mean, you got plenty of time to focus on what it is that you're talking about. But we had both come to that decision that that's what we were going to do. So by the time we arrived at the house, okay, that's set. Now we can watch a movie and keep it pushing.
So at that time, were you both living together, or were there
Mhm.
a lot of overnight stays, or what was the situation?
Yeah, we never lived together.
Okay.
That definitely was something that was frowned upon in my family, and I was like, "That's too in your face. We're not doing that." So no,
Right.
we never lived together, but definitely, there was times that he stayed over or I stayed over. And I remembered, this is the thing to me. So like that resolution that we came to on the drive, I mean, it's kind of like, okay, to me, it's kind of secondary to, I'm one that looks at things like, man, if this hadn't happened, this could have happened.
Hmm.
And one thing that really sticks out in my mind is that night, because like I said, I was going to start a new job the next day. And I really wanted to focus. I wanted to make sure I wasn't going to be late to work. I wanted to get my outfit together, get a good night's sleep, and all of that. And I think you were living in Reseda, Stanley.
Panorama City.
Yeah, and I was living in Granada Hills. And I remember because Stanley would always drive
Hmm.
wherever we went, no matter who car it was. He was he was the driver, and so I
Ain't nothing
remember.
changed to today. Oh my goodness.
I
I remember
remember.
that. I'm sorry.
So
I
he
know
was.
that about Stan
So
too.
we were coming back from Bakersfield, and I'm thinking, okay, he's gonna drop me off. Um, and I think it was my car, and I just said, yeah, it was my car. I said, you just take my car and pick me up in the morning or something like that. I can't remember all of that, but I remember having a specific conversation and debating him going home that night.
Mhm,
And I remember him saying, it's late. I don't want you coming back here by yourself, because I had a roommate,
mhm.
and she wasn't there that weekend. I think she had a funeral that weekend or
She
something.
was hardly ever there.
Yeah, she was hardly ever there. And so, but she wasn't, I know, remember she was not there that weekend, and he didn't want me coming back by myself. And I was kind of irritated. I was like, but I kind of just want to, be by myself and deal with all this stuff with, no, that's what it was. I was going to drive
Process.
you home, and I was going to drive back, and you didn't want me to drive back by myself. But anyway, I think about that. Had I, had he let me win the disagreement, I would have been home by myself.
Ah,
So,
wow.
and a lot of other factors, because I'm a college student. My bedroom, I had a twin bed,
Hmm.
and we had a futon downstairs.
Hmm.
So whenever he would stay, it was just more room, and so we would just sleep on the futon.
Hmm.
Had he not stayed, I would have been upstairs in my bedroom by myself, probably with my door closed,
Mm.
alone, when the earthquake hit.
So, and I'm glad you said with the door closed, because that's the one thing that I remember. To this day, I do not sleep with my bedroom door closed because of your story, because of
Wow.
your testimony. So, Stan, why don't you paint the picture of uh, the late night of January 16th going into the early morning hours of January 17th?
Wow, Kim reminded me. I had forgotten. I lost sight of that we debated. I won't say argue. You could call it an
No, it wasn't an
argument.
argument.
No,
I said
but
debate.
no, 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 no. I think no, you did. You did. So it wasn't us, fighting, but it was us bickering over, who's gonna win this one. And I remember now that yes, that I was adamant about that. And in hindsight, I believe that was for anyone who's listening, if you can believe it, I believe that was the Holy Spirit most definitely compelling me to do that, knowing what could have happened with her being, one, there by herself, two, with her being in her bedroom upstairs, which I'll describe for you in a minute, was hanging over the edge of a mountain by the time the earthquake was done. And two, with her door closed, she might not have been able to get it open and hence been trapped. But I do remember now being adamant about just saying, well, if you're not gonna stay at my house, because my car was there. We had left my car there, but Kim was gonna let me take her car, go back to my spot, and then come and pick her up in the morning. And or no. She
No,
was
you
gonna drop
reminded
me
me
off. You're
now.
right.
You reminded me
You're
now. You wanted me to stay at your house. That's what it was. And I was like, no, I'm starting a new job. I want to be at my own house. That reminded me.
With your perfectly set
Right.
up
With my
closet and
closet
your
all
laid out
together.
clothes.
Yeah.
right,
Sounds like first day
right,
of school. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
right.
So
But
continue,
yeah,
Stan.
but instead of letting that happen, I was just adamant about staying there that night with her. And so, we watched, just to fast forward you, we watched a little bit of television or something, but more or less, I believe we turned in early. And I'll never forget what time it was. It was 4:28 a.m., 4:28 in the morning. And I ended up doing analysis on it with the engineering firm that I worked on the earthquake and all the shaking. So I'll never forget it, January 17th at 4:28 a.m., 1994.
On Martin
That
Luther
shake
King Day.
on Martin Luther King. The shaking awakened us emphatically. I mean, so here's the way I describe it. This shaking was so.
Can I jump in first to
Yes, ma'am.
say that you were what inches from the epicenter basically.
Yep.
And that was a 7.4, 6.9.
6.7,
Okay.
6.7,
Okay.
6.6, depending on who you ask.
But Stanley, before you go on
Okay.
about the shaking waking us up, because I just want to add this one point that so I lived in like a townhouse, and for some weird reason, both bathrooms were upstairs. There was no bathroom downstairs. And I remember getting up. I didn't want to, but I had to go to the bathroom. But I remember getting up, going to the bathroom. I came down the stairs, laid back on the futon. No sooner than I laid my head down, I felt a little jolt. As soon as I laid my head, I felt a little
Really?
jolt. And I'd never felt an earthquake before. So I was kind of like, oh, a little earthquake. And I remember thinking that,
Ain't that
like, oh, a
cute?
little earthquake. As soon as I said that, bouncing up and down, like bouncing up and down.
Wow, I forgot that. You had just gone to the bathroom?
Mm-hmm.
The timing
Wow.
couldn't have been any more perfect. Oh
Wow.
my goodness. Oh my goodness.
So
Listen, the way
carry on. Oh, I'm sorry. Go
the
ahead.
best way to describe this, and this is the way I tell it to people, this is the analogy that I give. The experience that we had once the shaking began was like this. If you take a sheet, a strong sheet or a blanket, think about it with four corners, and you have the rock duplicated three times, so it's four rocks. Dwayne Johnson's on each corner holding it,
Oh.
and we are in the middle of this blanket, and they're throwing us up in the air, and we are getting airborne. During the earthquake, we left the
Mm-hmm.
futon.
We
We
got
left the
thrown.
futon. We were airborne. I was free falling. I
Mm-hmm.
felt zero gravity. And then so it began with us just being bounced up straight in the air. Eventually, I felt myself, and I know Kim did, getting thrown up against the wall like a
Yep.
ping pong. So I remember
Mm-hmm.
colliding with the wall just constantly, just
Mm-hmm.
getting banged up. Oh my goodness. You just and you couldn't I remember not being able to get my bearing. You know how if you get hit by I don't know, a ball, or somebody bumps into you, and you go to start falling, and then you say before you fall, you actually catch you catch your balance, and you get your bearing, and you recover, and you don't actually fall. So I remember trying to get that. I remember trying to get my bearing and sort of get my balance, and I couldn't do it. So I just, in my mind, I remember just letting it go. I just have to wait until the end. That was just, oh my goodness, the
So
craziest.
you said the end. Now here, my recollection. I was in Los Angeles at the time. Um, and I'd been through several earthquakes in my lifetime, but I can't remember how long that earthquake lasted. But it seemed like an eternity.
Yep.
And um, in my neighborhood in Los Angeles, there wasn't a great deal of damage. I'll even admit, in our home, Only a couple of cans toppled over in our pantry. Nothing broke.
Mm.
I lived in a wood frame home, but I could remember the moans of the earth. I could
Mm-hmm.
hear the moans of the earth. It sounded like a guttural moan. And after what felt like minutes, I cried out audibly, "Please, God, make it stop." I have
Mm.
chills thinking that.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So I
Mm.
didn't get thrown around. I had a 4-year-old child in a bed, and I had to grab him and protect him while I
Mm-hmm.
said, "Please, God, make it stop." I had my footing because I wasn't being thrown around. So I can't even fathom
Mm.
getting thrown around and trying to regain your footing in, I think it was a minute and 13 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
Seemed
Yeah,
a lot.
and
It seemed a lot longer.
yeah,
Yeah, sure did seem longer. Oh
yes.
my goodness. That wasn't even the worst part, but I want Kim to jump in if she wants to just add to that because she's doing a great job of filling in details that I can't remember. But
No, I
that
just remember after getting thrown up against the walls. I remember we got thrown to the ground, and I remember Stanley saying, "Just duck." And my roommate had she collected crystal or something like that, and she had like a
Mm.
glass cabinet, and I just remember hearing glass, um, ceiling. I mean, I just heard it was just so loud. Just everything was just like a roaring, and then just glass
yeah.
getting thrown. And then we were near. I had by my patio door, which was glass, but we couldn't see. It was pitch black dark. We couldn't see anything.
The power
So
had gone out, I'm sure.
so we just hear all this going on. So um, I remember telling them I loved them because I thought that was it. I thought we were gonna die.
Mm.
I thought the ceiling was gonna cave in at any minute, and that was it. I really thought that was the end.
Yes.
Wow.
Oh, I concur. I mean, and getting to that sound. Oh my goodness. The best ways the best way I've been able to describe the sound of the earthquake that night was if you had an area where there are about 4 tracks and there are 4 trains that are all coming down this track, each of their tracks at the same time. And we already know how loud a train can be. If you've ever been close to a track,
The
if
shaking.
you've like been at a train track stop and you roll down your window and you listen to the roar, and then you've got the roar of just the engine, and then you've got the sound of the wheels going over the tracks, the click clack, and then you've got screeching that's taking place. I remember the sound of the sliding glass door, which we were right next to, squeaking because the building was beginning to sway like this, and it squeaked until there was enough swaying that the position cracked the glass, and then you could hear the glass break. There's this loud crashing sound, and then you could just hear this sound that just seemed to be coming deep from inside the ground, and it was just so, it just filled your ears. You couldn't muffle it, and it
Mm-hmm.
just, all I could think about was, this, well, later was that this was like, just a bunch of trains passing at the same time. I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't think of anything else to describe it. It was just absolutely frightening.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, no pun intended, but this was really a come to Jesus moment, it sounds like. You
Uh,
both had your come to Jesus moment, and now you have another come to Jesus moment.
Listen,
Right.
Kim, you want to jump in? I'll share my most frightening part of this, but I'll let you. If you
Well, I mean, I think I said, I just thought at any moment the ceiling was going to crack. I mean,
yeah,
I wasn't
that's what.
like, it wasn't like I'm hoping I don't die. I really thought that was it. I mean, I just really thought that was it.
You're
Yeah.
right. I remember thinking that too. And of course, we're not discussing this with each other, but in my mind, I said, okay, we've been bouncing up against the walls. And at some point, I guess I was able to look towards the glass. That's why when I described the sliding glass doors as shifting like this was because there was a moment during that shaking that I actually had a chance to turn my head in that direction and look. And that's what I perceived. That's what I saw. That's what I actually saw. And as I saw that and the glass broke like Kim, I thought to myself, okay, well, what's next is that the roof is just going to come down on us, crush us, and we're going to be dead. And that'll be it. That'll be it.
I want to add to this picture the location where the greatest number of deaths that occurred was in Northridge. It was an apartment complex that had underground parking and then several, 3 or 4 levels of apartments above it. My cousin Nicole, I don't know if you remember Nicole Ellis. My cousin Nicole lived in an apartment complex in Culver City that was designed by the same architectural firm where that building collapsed. And what happened was one floor in that same shifting shifted and sandwiched one floor on top of another, kind of like a what do you call it? Like a house of cards. And it collapsed on top of a floor. And my cousin Nicole's apartment complex had damage in the same manner, like it was about to collapse. So her building was red tagged, so she could go in to get a few things, but she couldn't live in it.
Yeah.
So that's shifting. That's what was going on. You guys sounded like you were on your way to exactly that. Wow.
Yeah, her place was condemned as well. After that, couldn't go back in there. Yeah, you're right. You know, there were 2. Well, there was Northridge Meadows is the name of the apartment complex. I'll never forget it because after they rebuilt new apartments on there, I actually lived there for 13 years on the same property where all those deaths were. I didn't know that when I moved in there. I had lost track of that when I moved in there like 3 years later, but I was actually in brand new apartments on the same ground. But Northridge Meadows most certainly got the most attention during the earthquake because that's where most of the deaths took place. But there were other places that had experienced just as much destruction to the building. There just were no deaths. And one of those places was Kim's apartment where we were. If you could see this place afterwards, you would say that there's no way in the world that anybody should have lived coming out of this. But I don't know if you want me to go now. I'll tell you, worse than the shaking, worse than the bouncing up against the walls, worse than the thought of, oh no, the roof is about to fall down on both of us and is going to kill both of us. I remember, I remember having her hand at some point too, near the end of the shaking, because I just thought that was going to be it. But worse than that, when the shaking finally done, you know what I thought? I thought that Jesus was coming and that I was going to be lost. See, I knew the story. I knew the events. I knew the sequence of events that the Bible teaches. And I thought that I was experiencing them right then and there. It was pitch black. It was dark. It was already dark because it was the middle of the night. But what little light there was before the power went out, that was now gone. And now it's pitch black. And after the shaking stopped, I'm basically, just after the shaking stopped, I'm sitting there frozen, waiting to hear trumpets sound coming out of the sky. And I was waiting on the sky to light up and see Jesus, except that I was not going to see him as friend, but rather as foe. And I tell you, when I tell you that much greater than the fear I had of dying, losing my life to the earthquake, was my fear of not meeting Jesus in peace, hence going to hell. I kid you not. There's nothing could be further from the truth.
Wow.
Nothing could be truer than that. And that is that I thought that I was lost. That was just the most helpless, the most hopeless and helpless feeling I've ever had today. To today.
Well, there's one thing though. You had just rededicated your life to him.
Mm-hmm.
You had just rededicated your life to him. And I guess that kind of points to fear and doubt. And maybe in retrospect, I'm thinking of my own come to Jesus moment. I cried out. I wasn't thinking that. Well, my experience was different because my house wasn't crumbling down around me. But the moment I said, "Please, Lord, make it stop," the earth stopped. And I wasn't waiting for trumpets. I was instead thanking him. So wow. I'm looking, for the sake of time. Let's.
But let me just add to that point. So Stanley remembers feeling, this frozen feeling. But what I remember, as soon as the shaking stopped, I just remember him grabbing my hand and leading me out of my apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And we went out through my kitchen. My refrigerator had shifted and moved, and there was a huge hole in the wall. And we crawled out of that hole.
Not the door.
Not the door. The hole in the wall where the refrigerator used to be that had moved. And got outside, and it looked like a war zone. There were beams everywhere. The concrete was up, some was low. There's cracks everywhere. You hear people screaming. I lived right across from my manager. Her place was off the hill. Her whole place had fallen off the hill and was in the driveway. And we just ran out to where everybody else was. People were just running out into the middle.
Pajamas?
In pajamas. I had a t-shirt on, like a t-shirt to my knees, barefoot. Just ran out, no nothing, no ID, nothing. Just ran out with what I had on, and ran out to where everybody was. There was a pool and just an open space, so there was nothing. We wanted to be not around stuff that could fall on us. So everyone's out there. And then the explosion started. I lived across from a gas station there. Station started.
Power lines.
Yeah.
Gas lines.
That's when I thought it was the end of the world. When I started seeing those fires, I'm like, okay, is this the end of the world? And I remember probably at least 2 hours had passed, and I hadn't seen my manager yet, and she hadn't seen me. She thought I was in my apartment by myself. They had busted my windows out, had a ladder out there. And she's like, "We've been looking for you." I was like, "Oh, I've been out here for the last 2 hours." But I was in shock. 2 hours had passed, and I think I scratched my head. I had chunks of ceiling in my hair. I had we weren't seriously injured, but I did have some cuts on my legs because I had blood coming down. I remember on my legs that I didn't even feel anything from being cut or anything. And I remember asking at some point while we were out there, I asked Stanley, I said, "How did you know to go through the kitchen through that hole?" Because it was pitch black. And I was like, "How did you know to do that?" And he's like, "God just led me out there. God led me that way." And I have a vivid memory of that. I can remember that like that was yesterday.
Wow.
You know what? I got to add to that. I forgot you asked me that. Because I didn't really realize that until after we came back a week later to try to go salvage some stuff out of there. And here's where one of the miracles is for that night, and that is, Kim was absolutely right when she said that I grabbed her hand and I led her crouch down because I knew that the ceiling had come down some, but I didn't know how far. So I just wanted to make sure that we were low enough. So we crouched down and I led her to what I remembered to be the front door.
Mm.
But as Kim just intimated, we didn't go through the front door. The front door was jammed. So I walked her in pitch blackness towards what I remembered based on the floor plan of her apartment to be the front door. But in actuality, we made 2 turns. And I did not realize that. I didn't feel that. I don't remember doing that. So when we started walking toward the way where we began in her living room, I walked down a short hall towards the front door. And at some point, I began to see light in front of me. And in my mind, I thought, well, the door has been thrown off, and that's what happened. But I was leading her towards the front door, what I thought was the front door. But in actuality, there was a hole that was created adjacent to the door, and this hole was actually one wall over in the kitchen area. So in order for me to get that, I didn't actually take a clear path in a straight line to the front door. I went straight for a while. We made a right, and then we went past the wall into the kitchen, and then we made a left, and then we went through a hole, which I thought was the front door.
Wow.
What?
God led you.
Mm-hmm.
There. Miracles and wonders.
Hmm.
Signs and wonders. Signs and wonders. That's the only thing that can explain. So
Yeah, it has to be. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yep.
I'm looking for the sake of time. You were determined to get to Bakersfield on foot.
Well,
Yes.
not really on foot, but what happened?
Hook or crook, I'll
we
say.
couldn't reach anyone. We couldn't reach anyone, and so
Phone lines are down.
we were. I didn't have a cell phone at the time. I can't remember if you had a cell phone or not, but
My cell phone was in your car.
oh, okay. So
That
we didn't
got
have a
smashed
phone,
down to a foot.
and I remember being outside, and
Whoa.
so I had subterranean parking. We had parked my car underneath. And I remember I was just so happy to be alive and in shock. I remember somebody coming out saying, "Hey, just letting you know if your car was parked on the right side, it's gone." I didn't even I didn't even feel affected by it. Like heard what he said, but I was just like, I don't know. I had no reaction at all.
You're here.
Yeah, I was like, I had no reaction. And so I know I had a cousin that lived in Northridge, and I had a aunt that lived in Thousand Oaks.
Mhm.
And that's who I wanted to get in touch with. I'm like, they're the closest to me. I need to get in touch with these people.
Mhm.
So we were trying to strategize, try to figure out. I'm sure you know how Stanley's mind works. We're trying to figure out a plan. So this guy, we had met some guy. I don't even think I met him before. And he said, "Hey, my parents live up the street. You want to come there for a while and just kind of relax, get some food, water, whatever." So I remember doing that. I remember before that though, my manager gave me some jeans because, like I said, all I had was a t-shirt on. She gave me some jeans and some, I think, her husband's shoes. So I had these men's tennis shoes on that were like 2 or 3 sizes too big. So we go
We
to
was
this,
looking busted.
yeah, we go to this guy's house. We
But
stayed there
didn't
for a
care.
little bit. We used their phone. I couldn't get to my aunt. I couldn't reach her. Phone lines were down. Um, and I remember sitting there, and like I said, Stanley's mind, he's like, "Look, we need to try to find a phone. Let's just start walking." And that's how it started. I mean, I
Hmm.
never thought we'd walk as long as we did, thinking, "Oh, we'll just find a phone." And the freeways you couldn't get on the freeways, so we had to take the long way around. So we were taking sidewalks and streets at first until we could get to a point that we could get on the freeway.
You
Yeah.
walked 30 miles?
I think
We
we
took
calculated later, and it was like 30 miles.
it was maybe a little bit shorter now. It was maybe about 20 or so, but it was from Granada Hills to
Yeah,
Castaic,
yeah.
to Castaic Lake. But what time did we leave? We left these very nice people, these wonderful people who took us in. They gave us
Probably like 10
food.
o'clock, 10 or 11.
Yeah, it was about 10 o'clock, and we
In the
didn't get.
morning.
Yes.
No, yeah, it was in the morning, and we didn't get to Castaic until
It
probably like
was
around 9, 8 or 9. It was
it
dark.
was dark. It was dark.
It was
And
well dark.
it was
Yeah.
the most probably, well, at that time and for a long time thereafter, the most emotional day of my life, because it's like we survived the earthquake, we're still alive, but then I was like, am I gonna die from some coyote or something? Because I mean, once it got dark, it was scary. I mean, the noises, and then I just remember once we got on the freeway, I remember every time, because there was aftershocks too that day.
I was
So
going
I
to ask.
mean, yeah, so there's
Thousands.
aftershocks. Yes. So I remember walking on the freeway, and there was like Paul, there was almost a big one when we're on the freeway. And I remember every time we had to go under go under underpass down, we would like run. Like we had to run every time there was an underpass just in case, or overpass, just in case there
Right.
was a another aftershock.
And the bridge collapsed because we had to walk past the 14 and the I-5 junction, which part of that, one of those overpasses, or a few of those overpasses, had already collapsed. In fact, the police officer lost his life,
A
a biker.
motorcycle officer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it was too dark and he didn't see that the bridge was out going over the overpass. So someone had already died. I got this in my mind, and
I
now
remember.
we got to walk on the bridges and stuff. Then an aftershock shock comes. I'm like, we got to hurry up and get away from under this bridge before it
Right.
drops on us. So I mean, it was just an adventure all day. Paul, I appreciate that. Paul just put up that it was 18. He did the Google thing. But it was definitely
Oh,
more for us
thank you.
because we didn't go in a straight line, because we
Yeah, that's why I think
zigzagged.
it was 30 miles when I
Yeah,
said.
we zigzagged throughout the cities because we were taking a path where we were trying to avoid going underneath bridges or going over bridges.
Well, plus
So I
some of
mean,
the freeways were closed. We couldn't even get on the freeway.
we
And
couldn't
so
even, right.
that beginning part was kind of a relief because there was lots of people out. I mean,
Yeah.
so it was kind of like, okay, we survived. It's daylight. People are out and about. People are already on the street selling T-shirts. I survived the quake. I mean, I was like, how did they get these shirts so quick? I don't understand.
The
Really?
ingenuity of
Yes, I
folks.
remember they were
Probably us,
selling
right?
shirts like literally 3 hours after the quake. But there was people selling cups of water for $1. I mean, it was ridiculous. But that part was not. I felt a sense of relief because it's like I'm amongst people. It's daylight. We survived. But then it was like it was devastating and emotional because every time we would go somewhere thinking we're going to use the phone, it was not either
Mm,
not working or we couldn't get through. And so I
right.
remember like stopping at one place and saying, "Oh, we found a phone," but then we can't get through. I remember walking all the way to that store at Magic Mountain, excited, thinking, "Oh, we're far enough; it should work here." And I remember, I cried so much that day, but I remember literally bawling at Magic Mountain because we could not get through to
Yeah.
anybody.
You were
The phone didn't
devastated.
work. I was just
Yeah.
devastated because I knew too. I knew my parents were wondering what's going on. No one had heard from us.
Right.
And so,
They didn't hear from us all day.
yeah, so I was just like, I was wondering, what are they thinking? Like, what are my parents, what's my family thinking right now? And at the time, we didn't know about the apartment complex, like all those people had died. So, I mean, that
But they
actually,
were watching it.
that's a whole
Yeah.
nother show in of itself, what they were going through at home, watching the news, not hearing from us and
Panicking.
wondering what's going on.
Right.
So
While I If I
go
can
ahead.
jump in real quick, and Kim, if you want to turn some lights on, you're starting to have that Paul effect, like we were just talking about. It's getting dark where you are.
I know.
It's still daylight
Okay, let
here
me
in
excuse
northern
myself for a
northern.
minute.
All right.
Well, I'll
But
ask you. I'll ask you quickly. Did you have? I know it's the winter time. even though it's Southern California. So I don't know how cold it was. Did you have a backpack? Did you have food? Did you have granola bars? Did you have any of those things? Or were you like walking and fasting?
No, you know what? I can't remember if we had a backpack or not, but we definitely had a lunch that was packed. So the very kind people, I wish I knew who they were to this day. But this
Mm-hmm.
very nice family, they packed us a lunch. So, when we got to their house in the morning, we talked about our game plan. They were they wanted to help us get to where we needed to go. Of course, the phones weren't available then. I did have a cell phone, but actually, I think it was at my house in Panorama City. So that was done. I actually had a cell phone in the early 90s. But this was the era mostly of pagers at best. And you still need a quarter to use a payphone on the street. So we couldn't call out, we couldn't connect, but they gave us, and they knew what our game plan was. We said, okay, well, we're not going to stay there at your house all day. We're gonna keep it pushing. Cause my whole thing was, we getting to Bakersfield. I'm going home. I got to get out of LA. I was done with LA at that point. I
Right.
was like, I don't care. I don't love LA right now.
But remember, that was the time of calling cards too, because I had a calling card. That's what I was using.
Mm,
Oh my
I was using
gosh.
my
mm.
calling card trying to
With
get
Oh
through.
my
22
goodness.
numbers.
Oh my
And it
goodness.
kept
This
saying, I can't get through or something like that.
unavailable.
All
Can't get
circuits
through.
busy or something. Yeah.
Yep. So they
Wow.
packed us a lunch. They packed us a lunch. They gave us water bottles. In fact, I don't know if I should. People gonna think I'm crazy. For the longest, I think I just got rid of.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think just in the past 5 years, I have lost track of this bottle. We had these large, like almost 32-ounce bottles of Avion water that this
Oh,
wonderful family gave to us, along with some snacks. They packed us a lunch, and for a long time, the unfinished bottle. I didn't finish all of my bottle. I kept it as a memento. I can't even say the
Memento.
word mementos. For forever, I kept it in a treasure chest as a reminder of this day. And up until about 5 years ago, I still had that bottle of Avion water. That water was poisoned by the time I last saw it. But
I'm
they
sure.
packed us a lunch. So I don't think we had a backpack. I think we just kind of carried all of that. I don't know. Kim even had her
No, I didn't
purse.
have anything because I didn't have
We didn't have
I didn't
anything.
have any money, no ID, nothing.
So to answer your question though, Lorna, it was we know LA has got the best weather, but by the time the sun started to set, it was starting to get cool now. And so it was starting to get cold, so we had to deal with that. But it was disappointing to come to, we're walking for blocks looking for a payphone. We find one, no dial
Can't.
tone. Got to go somewhere else while we're trying to navigate through the city to make our general direction north. And so it was just disappointing to come to that. But we finally, and I do remember Kim really just about reaching her breaking point where, she's just feeling helpless and she's crying and stuff. And I'm trying to hang on and be the strong man, if you will. But I'm scared myself. I want to get home to my grandma. I'm trying to get home to my daddy.
Castaic Lake was it. If we hadn't reached somebody at
Oh,
Castaic Lake, that would have been that would have been my breaking point. Because I mean,
Now,
I still, once we got there, I still couldn't get through. But thank God Stanley was able to reach his grandma once we got to Castaic Lake.
so if I remember correctly, Castaic Lake is nearing the beginning point of the Grapevine.
not the Grapevine, but it begins the first incline, the
Okay.
hill that you start traveling up, heading into the mountains. It's the last part of the city, the north part of LA, and that's
Beyond
it.
Magic Mountain.
Beyond Magic
Mm-hmm.
Mountain, and that's it at that point. I know my Uncle Glenn is watching too tonight. He said he's going to be watching. But I was trying to get a phone call because I knew if I can get to my Uncle Glenn, he was going to find some way to,
That was your
Yeah.
to come
ride
and
to
get her.
date. That was your date ride, right?
That was yep. And my Uncle Glenn
Yeah.
found the car. Yep.
Okay.
But I just remember um I think there was two phones outside. And Stanley was trying and I was trying. And I remember I still could not get through to my mom. And then I heard him say, um, he said whatever to somebody on the phone, which made me know that he was actually connected with somebody. And I mean, I'm like about to well up right now thinking about the joy that finally we reached somebody.
Mm.
And I remember telling him, please tell your grandma to call my mom or call somebody in my family and let them know that I'm okay, because I still couldn't get through.
Wow.
And I remember while we were outside, I can't remember how we connected with this guy, but I remember a guy that was driving a big rig truck offered to drive us to the bottom of the Grapevine, and then Glenn was going to pick us up there. And
yeah, we was
Signs
coordinating.
and wonders.
Coordinating.
Signs and wonders. And what is, I am not a Bible scholar, but what is it there by grace? What is the line, the phrase? And I see Paul has, but pray ye not, your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day.
You mean that one or another one?
No,
Okay,
no,
I'm
there I go by grace or something like that. Yeah, but I mean, you were walking by faith, by grace, and I'll use the name of your group, by choice.
yes,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that was another. I'll just call him an angel in disguise. I certainly believe we were led. I believe that I was following the light of an angel to get out of the building, but he was definitely an earthly angel. I wish I could find that guy to give him a hug and say thank you again, because he brought hope to us. Because you're right. Kim is right. I'm not sure how I would have reacted by this point. I think that would have been my breaking point. I'd have had to cry at that point, because Steg is the last point. We know that I knew that if we didn't get through on a phone at that point, we were going to have to stay there, because from there, we're climbing a mountain along the freeway to try to get to, it wasn't going to happen. Not that night. So, I mean, we got through. And when I got through on that call, oh my goodness, talk about praising God for that blessing.
Now,
And so we coordinated. Yep. And that guy, he offered, I mean, almost like while I was on the phone, my Uncle Glenn was telling me, hey, I'm gonna come as far. No, I think I told him, Uncle Glenn, can you come and get us at the Grapevine? We just had somebody offer us a ride to that point, and he said, Stanley, I'll be there.
yeah,
Stanley, I'll be there, whatever it takes.
Now, I remember I haven't lived in Southern California for over 13 years, and I haven't taken that 405 trip in a few years. But I remember back then, once you hit Castaic, there are probably signs that say no exit, no services for the
No
next
gas
20.
for 35 miles.
Yeah. So there was going to be nothing, no exits, no nothing, only mountain. And the elevation grows to what, 2,000, 3,000 feet at least?
Higher than that, about, I think, 4,000 at the summit past Gorman.
You guys would have
3,000, something like that.
You would have had some great calves had you.
Well, mind you, I'm in 2 big shoes all day.
And cuts.
All these miles in these tennis shoes that are like 2-3 times bigger than my feet. And my manager was like this model-esque looking woman, tall. I'm 5'3". She's at least 5'11", 5'12", and she gives me her skinny jeans to wear all day.
So you got rolls.
I'm very uncomfortable all day walking.
Wow.
Yeah. But my uncle, if you want me to finish, I'll just continue on. We got we made it to the Grapevine. We rode together. It reminded me of an old what's a Pee Wee Herman movie. I think the first Pee Wee Herman movie when he got in the big rig with the one. Her name was Big something. It was a lady who was a truck driver.
And Big Marge or something?
Yeah, Large Marge.
Is that okay?
Yeah. Large Marge.
Oh my gosh.
So I'm back and forth. I'm thinking, okay, I'm grateful, but is he gonna turn out to be somebody crazy and try to take us off the road and kill us and stuff like that?
I was just so happy to be in that car, that truck. I was not thinking that he was crazy at all.
Yeah, that's the man's job. Always concerned about safety. I was like, man, am I gonna have to fight this dude and we gonna get dropped off at Lake Pyramid? But thankfully he was, as I said, he was an earthly angel, and this guy took us there, and we got off, And I don't think any sooner than we got out of the truck, Glenn was either pulling up. I don't think he
He
was
was
parked.
waiting. I think he was
Was he
yeah.
waiting?
I think he was
He
waiting,
was
or yeah,
waiting
or
at
he
the
had
foot of the
just got
grapevine.
there. Yeah, we didn't have to wait at
Wow.
all. I mean, he was there. And I
Wow.
remember Stanley wanted to get home so bad. He was like, "Tell your mom to come to my house. Pick up at my house." He was
Right.
like,
Because I didn't
Chivalry
want
he
to.
had
was like,
died by
"No
that
stops."
point.
He's like, "You're going to my
No,
house, and that's it."
I didn't want to have to go way out of the way to drop her off, only to come back home and see my family next. I was like, "No, tell
Right,
your mama to meet her. Let's all have a family reunion at my
right,
grandma's house."
right.
Chivalry got left in
Yeah,
Granada
it
Hills.
did that.
That was fine. That was fine with me.
Yeah.
And they were
Wow.
waiting, and they were
Wow.
waiting. All our family was there waiting, and you can't just, man,
And
I
I
can't
just remember
imagine
my
how
mom
happy.
saying, this could have been us gathering to plan funerals. I remember my
Wow.
mom saying that.
Wow. And
Yeah.
Paul has just shared that the Grapevine Summit, 4,100 feet, over
Mm.
4,100 feet. That would have been quite a
Yeah,
trek.
yeah,
You,
yeah.
you, you would have been triathletes by that time.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or
Wow.
Ironman.
Well,
Wow.
Wow.
by the time um, a week or so had passed, it was kind of like a story of telephone where our experience just kept getting blown up more and more and more, just ridiculous. So you would tell the story, then somebody else would tell the story. Well, you heard about Kim and Stanley. She was walking. They walked 30 miles. She was barefoot. They didn't have no clothes on. What? Yeah,
And Large Marge picked them up.
we had clothes on, and I wasn't barefoot.
Oh my
You know
gosh.
how that story gets exaggerated after it passed to a few people. Yeah, it did. But it was definitely a made for movie television. I mean, if we could have had cameras, if we could have been journalizing our day that day with a camera on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, people would never have left their seat. I mean, that would have been a
Yeah,
high rated movie because it was just so incredible the stuff that we went through. And at some point, we stopped seeing people on the streets. I mean, by the time, because watch this again, in the morning, there's a lot of traffic. So once the shaking is done, people feel like this is the best time to get away and get out of the city, or they're just gonna stay where they are because they're cool. Now the streets start to empty and the sun is going down, and we stopped seeing people before the sun went down. And I mean, it's like being in the movie Legend, I Am Legend, with Will Smith. It's like it's just us and the elements and wildlife, and we trying to hurry up and get to where we're gonna get before it gets dark and can't see any danger. But we eventually, oh my goodness, we did make it. Oh, what was the point that I was going to make? And lost my thought. But this was just an incredible day.
So
Incredible day.
a friend just texted me. Thank you, Kathleen. There, but for the grace of God, go I. And that was
Hmm.
that was that was you all. By the
yeah,
Yeah.
grace of God, by the grace of
Yeah.
God, by the grace of God.
definitely.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I what I reflect on, like I said in the early part of this conversation, that because of your story, over 25 years ago, I do not sleep with my door closed. And if I have an overnight guest at my house and they're bunked out in the living room, I'll pull the door shut. I will not close the door. And that has been my
Wow.
rule. And
Wow.
I survived a very, very large earthquake here in 2009 that was only superseded by the Haitian earthquake.
Mm,
Mm.
mm.
And my house was yellow tagged. It wasn't red tagged, but it was yellow tagged. And the impact of that, um, whenever I feel a little tremble, I put my shoes next to my door, next to my
Hmm.
bed, and I'm ready. I have my plan in my head. So I think your experience, our experiences have, in more ways than one, um, given us the thought to be prepared.
If oh my goodness, if there's just one more thing that I could mention, Kim, remind me. I think that we did get back there to your spot quite a bit late. And here's what makes me think that that's the case, because I remember having the thought on that day of what could have happened. And in one of those what could have happened scenarios, I was thinking that we could have been in her car at the time that the earthquake hit. Now, mind you, where she stayed, she had subterranean parking, and where her car was parked, which was just below, not exactly, but diagonal below her apartment, that part of the parking lot was collapsed, and every car that was parked underneath there was smashed like a pancake. And 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 it wasn't unusual for Kim and I to take a nap in the car as soon as we get to our destination before we actually get out of the
Oh,
car and go into the house.
I've
That was
done
that
that.
that was not unusual, because I just remember when we drive late and you're tired and you're just trying to get home safely, and you finally make it there, you turn off the car and you just relax for a minute before you get out, and it winds up being a nap for just a little bit. That was not unusual for she and I. And I think I remember it correctly that it was somewhat late. And I remember being somewhat tired upon that arrival. But we did not stay in there. But had that been a case, that's one more scenario where we would have been gone. We would have been in that car, and they wouldn't have recovered us for more than a week, weeks later.
Okay, I'm not remembering the nap situation, but okay.
So it's
What, napping
funny.
in the car? Oh,
I
okay.
don't remember the naps once we got to our destination, but okay.
That's because I was always driving, so I was the one awake.
Uh,
Oh, I
So
don't
when you
remember.
napped, you didn't know when we got there, but I took a nap when we were there.
Oh, okay.
so in the public radio world, that's called a driveway moment. And
Mm,
my car is 4 feet from my front door. So I mean, it's nothing for me to X in. Like, there are deer outside, there may be a raccoon. I live in a rural community. So there are times where I'll wait in my car for the coast to be clear because I don't want to encounter Bambi or Bambi's daddy or whatever. And I'll
mm,
find myself in my car for an hour for no reason. So I understand those driveway
mm,
moments,
mm,
but by grace. But by
Oh
grace.
yes.
Yep.
Oh
Yeah.
yes.
So don't question it. Don't
Yeah.
question it. So I go back to something you said, Stan, about thinking that this was the end of the world and
Hmm.
Jesus was about to come. And, you know, 2020 has been a tumultuous
Hmm.
year. This is the 78th day of March, it feels like. And each day I wake up and say, what else could happen? What else can go wrong? What
Hmm.
else could there be that there's a sign that Jesus is soon come? And the only thing that comes to my head is science is going to defy us. And all of a sudden, uh, um, gravity is going to reverse and we're just going to fall off of the earth.
Mm,
That
mm.
that's the only worst thing that I can think that can happen. But what do you think is the best resolution for preparation for Jesus to come in these times right now?
I don't know if Kim wants to answer that first, or she just wants me to,
You can
or
go
did you
ahead.
want me? Well, so let me say this. I think that I'll answer your question by saying this: that after that experience right there, that was pivotal for me, because it was life changing in a number of ways. One, it made me appreciate most certainly life a lot more. I felt like, yeah, I had done the right thing with my rededication, although in the moment of the earthquake, I thought it was just too late and it wasn't good enough. So it caused, it compelled a change in me, and it sent me on a, I became I became an avid studier of everything prophecy, everything that I can study about God. I wanted to do that because it was just that impactful. And I believe that it was a part of God's plan, because as I look at myself today with what I'm doing with the Reclamation Project, that being this ministry that appeals in a special and in a particular way to people who don't believe in God, to my atheist brethren, whom I love, I absolutely love. Um, uh, I think that this is what prepared me for that, because not only did I begin to study prophecy, I just began to question other things that I had been taught. I began to challenge all of my beliefs. And there were points where I was like, no, this can't be true, and, I began to ask the question, does God really exist? I began to study the supernatural, not become a Satanist or a witch, anything like that, but I wanted to know a little bit more about the dark side and how that all interacted with the light side, if you will. And so all of that studying, all of that time I spent researching all of that brought me to where I am today. So I guess you could say that I'm a bit grateful for the, if you could say that,
The
for that
journey.
experience, for the journey. Um, and I just believe that it just served as, among other things, as a catalyst, for me to draw closer to God, and for me to go out and try to search for more answers to questions. And that eventually led me to um, developing this passion for non-believers who are very much like us, like the Christian, who are wanting answers to questions. And I dare say, I dare say there's a lot to learn. Not I dare say, this is absolutely true. There's so many things that a Christian, a professed believer, can learn from a non-believer. Non-believers seem to inherently have this much higher value for life, where they just, but just think about it, and I'll be real quick. If you don't think that you will have a life after this one, then you'll treat the one that you have with the greatest care. You'll treat the world that you live in with the greatest care, because if you don't take care of it, you're not going to be here for very much longer to enjoy it. Meanwhile, the professed Christian believes that they have another life after this, so they take for granted, it seems, with the life that they have, with the earth that they have. And so, I just learn a lot from this community. I absolutely love them. And I've discovered that for many of them, they're just looking for answers. And that's just where we get to where I am today with the Reclamation Project, is a place for people to come and just ask those questions that they've been wanting to know for forever. And I also have just a closer relationship with God. I understand him better. I get it. I understand. And I needed that in 1994. I needed that to shake me into shape.
Literally.
Literally.
And Kim, you, if I recall, you said you rededicated your life to Christ that following week.
I did. Yes, the next Sunday at church, I did.
Wow. So I will tell you this, and I don't know about you, Stan, but I think this would be a really good place to start wrapping this up. And I will say this on a personal note. Several things have pushed me closer to God through tragedy or pain or hurt. And these last 24 months have been a roller coaster ride where I have doubted him, and I have doubted my relationship with Christ. And I have tried to resolve my African roots and my Christian knowledge and have them be one. And it's difficult.
Mm-hmm.
It's really difficult. But what I will say that I have had several signs and wonders that
Mm.
bring me closer to him.
Mm.
And your invitation for me to be in this place, in this space,
Mm.
in this conversation right now has been a blessing to me.
Wow.
It has
Wow.
been a
All
blessing
praises
to
be to
me.
God.
Um, you know, I am a Seventh day Adventist Christian, and I shared something with you, Stan, just a couple of days ago. The tone deaf words coming from the president of the Seventh day Adventist Church
Mm.
during this time of conflict and pain um, has been one of those things that has pushed me away from a denomination but pulled me closer to Christ.
Mm. Mm. I can believe it.
And when you hear a leader of a church, at the same time, you have a leader of a country using props in Christianity to send the wrong message, it makes you question. But then you have something like the Reclamation Project that
Mm.
gives you a safe space and a comfortable place
Mm.
to reclaim that connection and that relationship.
Wow. Wow.
So for that, I thank you.
Wow. All praises be to God.
I
I'm just a
thank you.
willing. Wow. Thank you. Thank you, Lorna, for sharing that. You know, I'm just a vessel who's just willing to go on God's errand. Something that I learned as a part of the Pathfinders
Ah,
of my church. Kim, I want to give you an opportunity to give a final thought too as well. But thank you, Lorna, for just sharing that thought. It certainly helps me. It's priceless for me to hear that because it reassures me that I am doing what I'm supposed to do. And this is that place. The Reclamation Project is here to do exactly what its title, its name implies, and that is to reclaim souls. Our motto here is no soul left behind, and that includes especially my non-believing community. I know that they're a difficult bunch for the traditional Christian. You guys are offended by the questions that they ask, and everything is blasphemous to you. But these are people who have honest inquiries. You know, they at one point were likely a practicing Christian who wanted to be on the team, wanted to be on board, but couldn't get the questions answered that they wanted. And they finally said, you know what? Well, there's this group over here that has an answer to the question. I'll go over here. Since you don't want to answer me, I'll go over here. And so I've just felt this burden to just provide, as we call it, provide a platform for people to come and ask those questions, and just to feel safe that they can explore this belief. Because after all, if we're confident, now for me, I'm confident that where I am and what I believe is the truth. I can show you scientifically, not just my own feeling. I can show you scientifically with evidence and objectivity that God exists and that everything is true. But it's not, I can't, people have to get there on their own. The best that I can do is lead them, and a part of that is providing them with a safe place to ask the questions as they continue on their journey. So thank you, Lorna, for just sharing that testimony.
yeah. You know, it's not just the unbeliever, the non-believer.
Mm-hmm.
The greater struggle is with the doubter.
Mm. One's on the fence.
The greater struggle is the doubter, in
Yeah.
my eyes. And you know, don't wait for the earth to shake before
Yeah.
you make that decision. Hmm.
Don't wait to get thrown up against the wall.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've often said, you know, every now and then, you know, I've talked about my difficult moments with Christ, and it's always God has a way of shaking some sense into you. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you've ever experienced your parents saying, "What were you thinking?" Hey,
They actually did it.
Daddy shook it. So did you have some closing thoughts, Kim?
Um, I just want to say thank you, Stanley, for this. When you first brought it to my attention, I'm like, why are we bringing this up? Why are we talking
Yeah.
about this? But it helped, it definitely at that time of my life was the worst thing I had ever been through. I grew up definitely in the church and with the foundation of, Jesus is my savior, and that bad things are going to happen. I mean, if good stuff happens all the time, then it's kind of like, well, what do you need? God's like, what do you need me for? You'll just, if you're going to just come to me when bad stuff happens. And so, um, definitely at that time, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, the worst experience. And it continued on. Because I remember for weeks and weeks at I think you said 4:28 a.m., I would just lay in bed until 4:29. That's when I could go to sleep. I could never go to
Mm.
sleep before then. So, I mean, it was a
Mm.
long time, and it affected me a long time. Um, but I'm grateful for it. I never want to go through another earthquake like that again, but I'm grateful for it because
Mm.
those experiences definitely do bring you closer to God.
Yeah. Come to Jesus moments. We all
Mm.
have one. And, if we can get away from the fire and brimstone of Jesus and move closer to the love and joy of Jesus, I think that'll make it easier for those non-believers or those doubters
Mm-hmm.
to have a more open heart
Mm-hmm.
to let them in.
Mhm.
Amen. I
Yeah.
agree.
Right.
So I think I will. It's a good time to wrap it up right there.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to say thank you both, and I'm grateful. We are grateful for you sharing your story tonight. And there are
Thank
many
you.
takeaways, but they definitely remind us that even when the odds are stacked up against you, God is able. Stan, is there anything else you'd like to
Oh,
leave us with?
yeah, absolutely. I'll just throw a quick plug in there. So you guys are tuning in to the Reclamation Project production. We have a Facebook page. We have a YouTube channel. I would like to say I hope some of you might be curious to join us tomorrow for our worship and for our Bible learning, beginning with our Bible learning. It's kind of like Sunday school, if you will, or Sabbath school, Saturday school. That begins at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. The topic will be unsolved Bible mysteries. And so we're going to discover some science in the Bible that took thousands of years for modern technology to catch up with. But the Bible was kicking credentials. It was educating people thousands of years ago. And so and then we're going to have worship at 2 p.m. We've got a special guest. He's a world-renowned television evangelist. His name is Dr. Carlton Bird. He's of the Breath of Life ministry, Breath of Life TV. And he's more than just a television evangelist. I mean, he is just a true man of God who goes beyond his call of duty. I saw him preaching at a protest, giving encouraging words to the young people, to the people who are out there doing that. He just does so much. So a big blessing is in store. So hope you'll
Okay.
join us tomorrow.
Well, to everyone tuning in, thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you tune in again next week for another broadcast of TRP Live. Remember also to like, share, and subscribe to stay in the know for upcoming broadcasts and events. For the Reclamation Project, I'm Lorna Bryant. Until next time, good evening.